kupata dawa ipasavyo. Tembelea kliniki yako au kituo cha afya kilicho karibu nawe kwa maelezo kamili kuhusu jinsi ya kupata dawa. Pia wasaidie jamaa na rafiki kupata dawa. Dumisha mawasiliano nao na ufuate mwongozo wa kiafya kutoka kwa kituo cha afya ili kujikinga na virusi vya korona. Pata habari kuhusu COVID-19 kupitia vyanzo vinavyoaminika. Piga 719 au bonyeza *719#. COVID-19 inazuilika. Jilinde, linda familia na jamii. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na serikali ya Kenya.
While some members in Jubilee party are staring at losing various positions in various committees as the purge continues. And on to some good news, the country records the highest single-day recoveries as 54 are released from quarantine. Good evening, welcome to Channel 1 News Hour. For now, let's take a look at the highlights.
I am delighted to inform you that today we have discharged 54 patients who have recovered from coronavirus disease.
Kenya confirms 123 new COVID-19 cases, bringing the total number of confirmed cases in the country to 2,216. Anxiety within the Jubilee party as at least 16 members of parliament sitting in various parliamentary committees risk losing their positions. And Kenyan researchers release analyses of coronavirus strains in the country. Welcome to the broadcast. My name is Jackie Mbira. Sign language interpreter this evening is Lucy Maura. Remember, you can interact with us on our social media platforms on Twitter at KBC Channel 1 or at Jackie Mbira or on Facebook at KBC Channel 1. Now let's kick off where the country has recorded the highest number of recoveries over a 24-hour period after 54 people were discharged after making full recovery. The Ministry of Health warning that failure by some Kenyans to observe COVID-19 containment measures might reverse gains recorded in the fight against the disease. The development coming as 123 more persons tested positive for COVID-19 after 2,112 samples were tested, with a further 3 people succumbing to the disease.
It is this video doing rounds across various social media platforms that has the Ministry of Health concerned. Life for these revelers seemingly back to normal. The Ministry of Health saying that such behavior would be costly for the country.
You get the feeling that people are either anticipating that there is going to be a relaxation of the measures that have been put in place, and have moved ahead of that expectation by actually behaving in that manner that things are back to normal. This is flirting with danger. It creates the perfect environment for infection. We must not allow ourselves to quickly recede to the old ways.
Another area of concern being the Nairobi Central Business District, where people are throwing caution to the wind, with others not adhering to the containment measures such as donning of face masks.
A casual walk down the streets of the CBD of Nairobi is very revealing. You will notice quite a number of people who may not be wearing masks. And if they are wearing masks, they are not wearing masks properly. I often see people using masks as a chin guard. The mask is not a chin guard. The mask must be worn properly.
The remarks come in as the country registered the highest number of recoveries after a further 54 people recovered.
This now brings to 553 the number of individuals who have recovered from the disease in the country. This demonstrates that with good management, this disease, when clinically manifested, is curable and hence not a death sentence.
However, the country continued to register new infections, with 123 more cases being recorded over the last 24 hours after 2,112 samples were tested, bringing the total number of positive cases to 2,216. Nairobi recorded 44 new cases, followed by Mombasa with 34, while Busia had 20 cases. Uasin Gishu had 12 cases, while Kiambu, Kajiado and Nyeri recorded 3 cases each, with Kilifi registering 2 cases. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health says that a decision on the way forward in areas under cessation such as Eastleigh and Mombasa's Old Town will be dependent on the response of the containment measures already in place. And as the country recorded the highest number of recoveries in a single day on Wednesday, the Ministry of Health is telling Kenyans that the war against the invisible enemy is far from over, at a time where a number of Kenyans have resorted to throw caution in the air. Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
And the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States has identified the growing debt burden and existing economic sanctions among its members as the major challenge, aggravating the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking during a virtual summit of heads of state and governments that he convened in his capacity as the organization's president in office, President Uhuru Kenyatta observed that close to half of low-income and least developed countries have hit debt crisis levels. And now we shall be bringing you that report later on. Now moving on, the fate of at least 16 members of the National Assembly allied to Jubilee Party in various parliamentary committees now hangs in the balance. This is after the newly installed Majority Chief Whip Emmanuel Wangwe dispatched letters exhorting them to show cause why they cannot be kicked out of the privileged positions amid allegations that they have refused to toe the party's line. Notable figures facing the axe include outspoken lawmakers such as Moses Kuria of Gatundu South and his Kikuyu counterpart Kimani Ichung'wah.
A day after assuming office, the new majority whip in the National Assembly, Emmanuel Wangwe, has started cracking the whip within committees. The purge principally directed at lawmakers perceived to be rebellious of President Uhuru Kenyatta's agenda. So far, sources within the ruling party have disclosed that a total of 16 legislators drawn from the ruling party have been served with discharge letters. Most notable in this group include Kimani Ichung'wah, who is the chairperson of the Budget Committee, Gatundu South MP Moses Kuria, who has been the vice chairperson of Transport Committee. Other letters that we have seen include those written to Labour and Social Welfare Committee Vice Chairperson Joyce Correll, Trade Committee Vice Chairperson Cornelis Rem, and Robert Pukose, who is the Vice Chairperson of Energy Committee. In the letters, the affected lawmakers have been given 7 days to show cause why they cannot be kicked out of the said privileged positions. Evidently, most of the members addressed in the disciplinary letters are sworn political allies of the Deputy President William Ruto and his 2022 presidential ambition. This comes as sources indicate a section of MPs strongly behind the ongoing purge in the ruling party has started collecting signatures to push for the removal of Aden Duale from the position of Leader of Majority. Kevin Washira, Channel 1 News.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin Wisher, for that report. Now, moving on, a scientific report on genome sequencing for COVID-19 cases in Kenya reveals that infections were detected in March were imported cases. Now, the report compiled by KEMRI's Center for Virus Research and Center for Geographic Medicine Research in collaboration with the National Public Health Laboratory, however, says there was evidence of transmission between Nairobi and Mombasa prior to the introduction of restrictions on movement into and out of the two regions, indicating that one of the infections reported at the coast was related to an infection in Nairobi.
Kenya reported its first SARS-CoV-2 case on 13th March 2020, over 3 months after the first case of the disease was reported in Wuhan, China. Cases that have now surpassed the 2,000 mark, with Mombasa and Nairobi counties recording the bulk of confirmed infections. And as the country struggles to contain the spread of the deadly virus, a genomic data analysis conducted by KEMRI's Center for Virus Research and Center for Geographic Medicine Research in collaboration with the National Public Health Laboratory suggests that infections detected and confirmed in March were largely from virus importation into the country.
Genome sequencing is when you take the genetic material of an organism. So for instance, if we would take the genetic material of a human, then you can basically read the letters that make up, that constitutes that organism. Mm-hmm. So all the components of that organism is written in that code that's in the genetic material.
According to the report, there were at least 9 separate importations of SARS-CoV-2 into the country prior to the 30th April 2020, based on a proportion of sequence cases. The analysis indicating the SARS-CoV-2 virus strains circulating in Kenya bear similarity with strains observed elsewhere in the world and comprised of 10 global lineages, with evidence of multiple introduction of largely European-centric lineage into the country.
When we compare the Kenyan sequences with the global data set that's out there in the public database, then we have demonstrated that there are 9 importations into Kenya. In terms of the question around the strains, what we've just submitted is a preliminary analysis. So we haven't gone into depth to analyze the strains you're talking about, the L and S, to be able to give you a comprehensive answer of what the distribution is in our population.
The report provides evidence of a local transmission of the virus following introduction of the above clusters, and in what vindicates the government's decision to cease movement in parts of the country. The report that analyzed 122 samples from selected cases avers that there was transmission between Nairobi and Mombasa prior to the introduction of restrictions on movement into and out of the two counties.
The restrictions were put into place to essentially protect us from and limit the spread of the virus. In terms of if the country were to open up again, or open up the borders between counties, it's not easy to tell what will happen, but because of the mode of transmission of the virus, person-to-person contact, if we increase the person-to-person contact, then you'll increase the spread of the virus. And that's just speaking on a scientific point of view, that if you...
Severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 is a single-stranded positive sense RNA virus and the causative agent of COVID-19 disease. From its origin in Wuhan, China in 2019, SARS-CoV-2 spread rapidly to nearly all countries in the world, resulting in over 6.4 confirmed cases as at Wednesday, the 3rd of June 2020. Caroline Kamau reporting for Channel 1 News.
Now allow me to take you back where the Organization of the African, Caribbean and Pacific States has identified the growing debt burden and existing economic sanctions among its members as the major challenge aggravating the negative effects of COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking during a virtual summit of heads of state and governments that he convened in his capacity as the organization's president in office, President Uhuru Kenyatta observed that close to half of low-income and least developed countries have hit debt crisis levels.
As the world continues to grapple with the negative effects of coronavirus, the Organization of the African, Caribbean and Pacific States have identified the growing debt burden and existing economic sanctions among its members as challenges that are aggravating the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The health and economic crisis forming part of the agenda of the inaugural extraordinary intersessional summit of the OACPS heads of state and government. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who convened the virtual summit in his capacity as the organization's president in office, saying that the debt for many OACP countries continue to rise and will soon hit crisis levels.
The debt of many of our member states continue to rise. 44% of low-income and least developed countries are in debt distress or are assessed as being at high risk of external debt distress. COVID-19 and related global economic shocks will only exacerbate the problem.
The leaders welcoming the various debt relief measures being rolled out by global lenders, even as they called for more interventions. The summit was held under the theme Transcending the COVID-19 Pandemic, Building Resilience Through Global Solidarity, was aimed at assessing the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on members of the OACPS, as well as identifying opportunities for global solidarity, action and mitigation.
As of the 31st of May 2020, persons within the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States reported infected by this disease were about 112,243, with approximately 3,026 deaths. While these numbers may seem relatively low in the context of the global numbers, the impact of COVID-19 on our economies is disproportionately high and in some cases has been totally devastating.
President Kenyatta saying diversified partnerships will help alleviate the health and socio-economic disruptions caused by COVID-19.
If one of us fails, we all fail. We can only win this battle if we win it together. This is the time for solidarity, and I think our organization is 100% behind the work and the efforts of the World Health Organization, and they can continue to count on our support.
The leaders agreed to broaden sources of financing COVID-19 response and recovery interventions through public-private partnerships, as well as through increased access of concessional financing. For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Acheng Oma.
Now, still on COVID-19, efforts to cushion vulnerable communities from the adverse effects of the coronavirus pandemic have been enhanced across the country, with the national government partnering with stakeholders to address emerging challenges. In the North Rift, the government has identified over 3,000 people with disabilities to benefit from the government's 200 million shillings kitty set aside to cushion vulnerable groups from the effects of COVID-19.
North Rift National Council for People Living with Disabilities coordinator Leonard Dofula says 100 people from each constituency will benefit from the funds. Speaking while launching the fund in Eldoret, Dofula said all 6 counties from the region, which includes Uasin Gishu, Nandi, Baringo, Turkana, Trans Nzoia, West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet stand to benefit.
His Excellency the President allocated National Council for Persons with Disability 500 million to caution persons with disability against this disease. We have given this money to those who had arrears, and we have a balance of 200 million. So right now we are recruiting other persons with disability who are equally affected by this COVID.
Meanwhile, the government has released 60 billion shillings towards paying road contractors across the country in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic that has affected all sectors. Already, 30 billion shillings has been paid to the contractors over the last 2 weeks, while the balance will be released in the next fortnight so that the ongoing road projects will be completed.
The government committed to pay 30 billion last week, another 30 billion in the next 2 weeks, to make sure all these projects you are seeing are completed. And that is the mission of government.
In the meantime, human rights organizations in Uasin Gishu have raised an alarm over rampant defilement of girls during the COVID-19 period. They say many school girls were being lured to bars that continue to operate despite a ban by the government, where they are forcibly defiled. Mary, not her real name, narrates of an ordeal where she was threatened and forced to engage in an unprotected sex for 6 days. She says the man locked her at a guest house and threatened to harm her if she dared to raise an alarm. The 17-year-old Form 2 girl fell victim after drinking a bottle of soda suspected to have been laced with alcohol.
Boys are giving these girls dawa, pombe. Girls are being lured through these things. Now wanapewa kwa juice. So the government should mitigate on factors. How are they going to mitigate? How are they going to deal with this issue of the girl child? Kwa sababu maybe in the next 6-7 months we'll be having so many pregnancies. Itakuwa ni shida kabisa.
Elsewhere, a 9-year-old girl from Mareba in the city's Lunga Lunga slums has surprised many after she used monies gifted by her family and friends during her birthday to feed the needy in the slums. Sheridan Imani took the 6,000 shillings she was gifted and bought food which she distributed to 20 vulnerable families that are grappling with the effects of COVID-19 pandemic.
Nilipatiwa pesa as my birthday present. Nikaamua niwasaidie na hiyo pesa. Sikuwa nataka chochote.
So ni vizuri sana tuweze kusaidiana. Ukiwa uko pale uko na unga mbili kwa nyumba, chukua moja patia your neighbor who doesn't have any. Hata ukitembea kwa barabara unaona wamama wako na watoto wako na njaa, huwezi kosa kitu ya kupeana.
Beatrice Getonyenge-Tich, Channel 1 News.
Well, that report by Beatrice Getonyenge-Tich brings us to our first break here on Channel 1 News Hour. Don't go too far. We will be right back.
Hello, this is Dr. Patel. Why aren't you not picking up my call? Koja kwanza, wewe mimi na kama napigia wewe simu, wewe pana chukua simu. Wewe nataka advance salary, wewe nakuja ofisi, mimi napatia wewe advance 50,000.
Kupata advance, bonyeza star 811 star 817 hash.
Anakula mugoka na bana kingia kazi.
Je, ungependa kujua jinsi ninavyojizuia kuambukizwa au kuambukizana virusi vya corona? Ni rahisi. Mwanzo, ninaziendesha shughuli zangu zote za kikazi na hata za kibiashara kutoka papa hapa nyumbani kwangu. Baadaye, ninaitunza mwili wangu vyema kwa kuiweka katika hali iliyo sawa kupitia mazoezi ya mara kwa mara na pia lishe bora. Mwishowe, ninaungana na jamii yangu pamoja na marafiki zangu kupitia njia ya simu au mtandao ili kuzuia dhiki na upweke wakati huu mgumu. Kumbuka, haijalishi kama uko na virusi vya corona au la, salia nyumbani. Uokoe maisha.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
What's this?
It is mostly used for washing babies.
I don't have any babies at it.
For the record, I told them this was not a good idea. Someone can die of heart attack.
Shall we move on? Whatever I do in my spare time is none of your business.
What is wrong? What is there to like here? What is there to like here? Have you taken any decorations before?
Just tell her what she's doing wrong.
Why do you have to look down on people like that?
Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
And welcome back. The government is set to increase the number of safe houses to cater for victims and survivors of gender-based violence, a vice that has been on the rise since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. Public Service Youth and Gender Chief Administrative Secretary Rachel Shibesh says the country has witnessed increased cases of gender-based violence, adding that establishment of more shelters across the country will offer respite for victims of such violence. The adverse effects of the coronavirus pandemic, which is ravaging every corner of the globe, has resulted in uncertainty and a surge in violence, especially against women and girls. And with the trend on an upward trajectory, the government is set to put in place measures to redress systems, strategies and structures to rid the society of gender-based violence.
But we have spoken on the possibility of increasing that space, so that women, when they are violated because of what we are going through and the stresses in family, some families are not able to cope with the stresses, and this is leading to GBV increase, even that was unprecedented. So we must be able to give a safe haven to those who are affected by GBV. But more importantly also is to think of a mechanism that can help us help families undergo COVID when their mental state is good.
Public Service Youth and Gender Chief Administrative Secretary Rachel Shibesh noting that there was a need to provide a safe haven for victims of the vice.
To start talking and allowing people to talk so that we can curb GBV. It really is a mental health issue. And once it's a mental health issue, it's something that needs to be looked at by the experts who can help us return our families together.
At the same time, Shibesh says the national government, in partnership with the county government, was working on increasing funds to cushion vulnerable individuals in the society. Now, away from that, Kisumu County Governor Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o has introduced a raft of radical measures aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19 disease within the region. In the new measures, all persons accompanying diseased persons into the county for burial must be screened at points of entry, be in possession of cause of death certificates from the government pathologist, while bodies must be buried within 48 hours.
With Kisumu County having confirmed at least 6 coronavirus cases and the number likely to grow, Area Governor Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o is taking nothing to chance. Nyong'o has released a raft of stringent measures he says must be adhered to as the county contends with the reality of the existence of the virus in the county.
In view of our listed information on incidences of importation of positive COVID cases into Kisumu, either through dead bodies themselves or through those accompanying our late brothers and sisters to be buried in Kisumu County.
Nyong'o says it will now be mandatory for anyone bringing a dead body into the county for burial to be accompanied with a cause of death certificate from a government pathologist.
All bodies being transported from outside the county to or through the county shall be accompanied by cause of death record certified by a government pathologist and shall be accompanied by not more than 5 persons.
Nyong'o says the mourning crew must not be more than 5 and must all have necessary documentation confirming their negative status.
Bodies transiting through the county of Kisumu shall be escorted by a team of security and public health officers from the border of entry to the border of exit and shall not be allowed to make any stopover.
Nyong'o also says his county will also carry out a certified random sampling testing to help authenticate the true scale of COVID-19 cases in the county. Achola Simon, reporting for Channel 1 News from Kisumu County.
And on a separate matter, selected panel chaired by former Administrator at the National Treasury Mutua Kilaka is interviewing contenders for the Auditor General's post. The exercise that commenced Tuesday seeks a suitable candidate from 10 who were shortlisted to fill the position that has been vacant since August 2019 following the exit of former office holder General Edward Oku.
Interviews for the position of Auditor General that took off on Tuesday have entered the second day. From the list of candidates who have been shortlisted for the position, it appears the interviewing panel is going all out to get the right entrant from a diverse pool. On the first day, 5 candidates who underwent scrutiny were listed as Dr. Leonard Larry from Busia, Edwin Kipko H. Kamar from Elgeyo Marakwet, Benson Ocheng from Homa Bay, Sylvester Ngei Kiine from Makueni, and Elizabeth Wangui Ngoringa from Nyeri. On Wednesday, Idris Abdi Abdullahi from Wajir, Meshak Obiero Onyango from Siaya, Nancy Janet Kabui from Nyeri, Paul Wangila Masinde from Bungoma, and Dennis Teuri Kariuke are facing the panel. The panel, led by former National Treasury bureaucrat Mutua Kilaka, is supposed to forward 3 names to the President and the scores of each of the 10 candidates to Parliament for perusal. This comes after the defunct panel that was led by Sami Onyango failed to get a suitable candidate to fill the position left vacant by former Auditor General Edward Ouko in August last year. For Channel 1 News, I'm Sarafina Robi.
And staying on the topic of COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic has had ripple effects on virtually all aspects of our lives, affecting the way we live. The associated uncertainty has left our futures in doubt, bringing with it heightened anxiety among the global population. But how do you deal with anxiety and associated stress?
To switch from being afraid to being hopeful and trying to, to change our normal, our operation to what we can do. So part of what I want to encourage right now is, instead of panicking and being afraid and shivering in fear, instead we should say, what can I do? Maybe this thing will take long. It's tough times. We don't expect it to be easy, but again, we cannot sit there. We still have to move on. We have to feed ourselves, we have to eat, we have to clothe ourselves. We can scale down, we can do a few things, we can adjust a few things, but I want to ask us not to sit passively and be on the receiving end. Let us seize the initiative. Let us try new directions. Let's attempt new things. Am I saying it isn't? No, but I'm saying we are between a rock and a hard place. I'm saying what we can do now is just to liberate our minds and allow ourselves to be creative. So let's be creative. Let's try new things. Don't sit there panicking, brooding. When you find yourself the panic coming back, the fear coming back, the questions coming back, the doubts coming back, distract yourself by taking that energy to your strengths. Maybe there's a direction you have always wanted to take. You have never taken it. Now your job is being threatened or you even lost it. Maybe you could seize this opportunity now to change the direction of your life. So.
Now let's have a global outlook on coronavirus, where India's coronavirus infections have crossed the 200,000 mark, with health experts saying the peak could still be weeks away in the world's highest, most populous country. Cases jumped by 8,909 on Tuesday in one of the highest single-day spikes, taking the tally to 208,709. More than 6.4 million coronavirus cases have been confirmed around the world, according to data from Johns Hopkins University.
India's coronavirus infections surpassed 200,000 after cases jumped by nearly 9,000 on Tuesday, in one of the highest single-day spikes, pushing the nationwide total to 208,709. Only 6 countries have officially confirmed more cases than India. The latest development coming as Cyclone Nisarga moved across the state of Maharashtra, a region home to the mega city of Mumbai, which is already reeling from the impact of the virus. Elsewhere, several nations in the Latin American region, including Brazil, Peru, and Mexico, are easing restrictions even as cases surge. The World Health Organization has warned that reopening economies too quickly risks a resurgence of the virus. Italy has reopened its borders and ended travel restrictions between regions, while Spain is working on starting to gradually open up to tourists from countries considered more secure from June 22nd. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has defended plans to introduce quarantine measures for almost all international travelers from 8th June, in a critical step to stop a second wave of coronavirus hitting the country. In South Africa, the total confirmed coronavirus cases jumped to more than 35,000, with the country recording the most confirmed virus cases of any nation in Africa. More than 383,000 people have died, including more than 108,000 in the United States, while over 3 million people have recovered from the disease around the globe. For Channel 1 News, I am Emily K. Bade.
Now, Pope Francis has called for national reconciliation amid widespread protest and violence that has gripped the U.S., while noting that the world cannot turn a blind eye on racism, terming it intolerable. Pope noted that the street violence that has broken out are destructive. Tens of thousands of people have demonstrated mainly peacefully across the U.S. for an 8th night following the death of African-American George Floyd in police custody. Many protesters defied curfews in several cities imposed with violence and looting reported in some districts.
Del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo.
Pope Francis broke his silence on the unrest in the United States, saying no one can turn a blind eye to racism and exclusion. But he at the same time condemned violence being witnessed as a result of widespread protests, terming them self-destructive and self-defeating. The Pope, who dedicated the entire English language section of his weekly audience to the U.S. situation, called for national reconciliation and peace. Peaceful demonstrators have defied curfews and remained on the streets of major U.S. cities for the 8th night of protest over George Floyd's death. Recent protests have seen less violence and fewer police clashes, unlike the situation in the last few days. One former officer, Derek Chauvin, was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter, but protesters argue the action is not enough and that other officers involved should also be charged. Nearly half of the U.S. has activated the National Guard. Those protesting against police brutality have been met with excessive force at times by authorities. Some officers have also been injured in the protests. Experts hired by George Floyd's family and the Hennepin County Medical Examiner have concluded that his death was a homicide. For Channel 1 News, I am Emily K. Bade.
In our matters security, over 526 bows and 1,120 arrows have been surrendered to the government by members of 2 warring communities in Narok County as part of ongoing efforts to restore peace in Narok South, where 9 people have so far lost their lives. Narok South County Deputy County Commissioner Felix Kisalu, who received the illegal weapons, urged those still holding arms to hand them over to authorities. The development coming as armed bandits raided a village in Baringo County, making away with 20 heads of cattle.
Security operations in Baringo County meant to restore normalcy appear not to be providing desired results after bandits made away with cattle after wreaking havoc in Tiati sub-county. The attack coming even as security operations to flush out bandits in the area was launched.
Tunahitaji amani, saa hii watu wanalima, saa hii watu wanakasana kwa mambo ya COVID-19, coronavirus, na saa hii watu hawana chakula, maji ndio hiyo. Na sasa mtu kuja kuvamia watu kuchukua ng'ombe wakati huu ya operation. Hiyo ni madharau sana kwa serikali.
Baringo South MP Charles Karumen condemned the daring banditry attack at Ishkanin village, accusing a section of the political leaders from the region of fanning hostilities.
Wakati ya ukora imeisha na tunasema serikali lazima liwe serikali. Na yule anayeshindana na serikali basi shika yeye na kuingiza yeye ndani. Hata kama yeye ni nani, hata kama yeye ni mchumbe. Na saa hii watu wake anavamia watu na yeye anakuja television na kulalamika na watu wanavamia. Hiyo ni kuchochea.
Kilometers away in Narok County, efforts to have members of the Maasai and Kipsigis communities coexist harmoniously appear to be bearing fruits after more than 526 bows and 1,120 arrows were surrendered to the government.
Kama tunataka kuzuia vita, si tuchukue zile silaha zinatumika kwa hiyo vita. Kwa hivyo leo tumefurahi. Na tunasema bado ile estimation yetu katika area hii, sababu tulikuwa hapa wakati ya mshike. tuko na estimation yetu kujua ni mishale ngapi iko katika area hii.
Narok South Sub-County Deputy Commissioner Felix Kisalu, who received the arms at Ololompaki area, saying the government will be forced to conduct a forceful disarmament exercise if all the weapons are not returned over the next 3 days.
Hakuna boma ina uta. So village elders, in the next 3 days, nataka kupata list ya zile boma ambazo bado hazijasalimisha. Wengine wanaficha kwa bedroom, wengine wanachimbia chini, wengine wanaficha kwa choo, wengine wanapanda mti wanafungia huko juu. Tutakuja kwa hiyo mti, tutaingia kwa hiyo choo, tutaingia kwa hiyo bedroom, tuchukue hizo silaha.
Residents who heeded to the calls to return illegal arms called on the government to strengthen peace in the area, which has suffered from perennial conflicts.
Wale watu ambao wametoa peace committee lazima tuangalie na tufuate muisi, yani kuliko sisi wote tunapigana kwa shida ya mtu mmoja.
Pahali moshi iko, moto haitakosekana. Ikiona pahali popote kila mara kwa mara watu ikipikana kwa area hii, maneno yanatokea ile kona tu na watu wanakuja kuumia kwa pande hii.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Well, let's take a sample of some tweets coming in whereby, well done career, you say you're watching from Miss Wando in Bomet County, while Godwin Shinyalu says you're watching from Shinyalu Live. Well, your company is much appreciated. Well, we'll take a short break. When we come back, the business news is up next.
Top on Channel 1. Yote aliye na kinga hafifu mwilini yuko katika hatari ya kuambukizwa COVID-19.
If you have no feelings for me and the past remains in the past, then why can't we be friends?
We were friends and then this happened.
Won't happen again.
Wondering if our Angela is committed enough. He'll have to train hard. This is not a small league.
COVID-19 inazuilika. Jilinde, linda familia na jamii.
Najua nikikupatia kiwango kizuri cha pesa, utanifanyia kazi hii kwa njia nzuri zaidi. Basi nimekuongezea hata na 500 juu.
Aki Mungu akubariki.
Najua tu Nancy lazima ako na agenda zake.
Nani alikwambia mimi sina agenda zangu?
You again? I want to know exactly what you're planning to do with my life.
Bwana sikuelewi.
Welcome back. Let's talk business, where the National Treasury has defended the proposal to impose tax on digital services, saying digital marketplace has taken roots in the country. Cabinet Secretary Kuritani says the digital marketplace supply regulation is being subjected to stakeholder consultations before it is implemented. Here is O'Brien Kimani with the details.
Online sales eclipsed the 1.6 trillion shillings mark in the last quarter of 2019, and it is poised to reach the 3 trillion shillings mark in the last quarter of this year, making the business a lucrative tax target. The National Treasury last year proposed to start taxing online transactions as more Kenyans migrate to electronic commerce. Treasury defines marketplace as any supply of a service made of a platform that enables the direct interaction between buyers and sellers of services through electronic means. The Kenya Revenue Authority has already published the regulations calling for public participation. Treasury CS Ukur Yatani has told the Senate ICT Committee that the government has embarked on widespread consultation, including benchmarking with countries like the United States, to ensure the regulations do not hurt the nascent digital economy in Kenya. The regulations target both domestic and international marketplace doing business with individuals or entities in Kenya. E-commerce giants like Amazon, Alibaba and Jumia are expected to start levying a 14% tax on goods sold on their platforms once the regulations come into force. Other targeted platforms are ride-hailing companies like Uber, Bolt, Swivo, as well as online tickets vending companies like Ticket Sasa and M-Ticket, among other service providers.
In a separate matter, the Anti-Counterfeit Authority has destroyed contraband worth 27 million, ranging from surgical face masks, pharmaceuticals, medical tablets and electronics. Speaking during the exercise in Athi River, Machakos County Deputy Head of Public Service Wanyama Musiambo said despite COVID-19 restrictions, the government is enhancing checks at border points to curtail contraband inflows, even as pending court cases derail the fight.
In the wake of coronavirus pandemic, crooked traders have not missed a chance to cash in as demand for various items surge. The Anti-Counterfeit Authority says that in the last 2 months, fake surgical face masks, sanitizers and purported anti-COVID-19 medical tablets worth 30 million shillings have been seized.
Ukiwa wewe mwananchi wa kawaida, unaingia dukani ama popote pale, kweli unaweza tofautisha hizi mbili, ukajua gani ndio mzuri na gani ndio mbaya. Kwa sababu yote imeandikwa, kama kuna mahali ya warning umeambiwa.
These are part of our contribution as the Anti-Counterfeit Authority to ensure that Kenyans, as we fight against this COVID-19, that we do it with genuine products. Because if we use products which are not genuine, they are counterfeit, they are fake, they will not serve the purpose.
Other illicit goods nabbed during the period include electronics, fertilizer, and pharmaceuticals. The authority warns that the illicit trade is a threat to the country's manufacturing agenda as it pushes out local manufacturers out of business.
By destroying these counterfeit goods, we're not necessarily being anti-business. Our objective is to promote legitimate, fair trade practices and support the economic growth and prosperity of our nation.
However, as the war on counterfeit intensifies, Deputy Head of Public Service Wanyama Musiambo has called for tighter monitoring at all border points to intercept any contraband before reaching the market despite litigations.
We are not going to keep such items in a store to wait for court cases. And because of that, teams are huko, they are northeastern. They are under firm instructions. Ile yoyote wanapata contraband goods entering our country from our neighbors, they destroy instantly.
109 cases are currently pending in court, with 360 traders prosecuted over illicit trade. SCA says goods worth 100 million shillings have also been lined up for destruction in Mombasa. Kenya is estimated to lose 2 billion shillings annually to illicit trade.
The Transport Ministry expects construction of a new meter gauge railway line from Mai Mahiu Station to Longonot Station to begin in a year's time before extension to Malaba border. Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia says this will provide seamless connectivity to the East African hinterlands and reduce congestion at border crossings. Macharia tips the new move to haul regional cargo to Naivasha ICD to enhance business on the SGR track.
The directive to haul all cargo destined for Uganda, Rwanda and South Sudan to the Naivasha Inland Container Depot commenced Tuesday despite protests by leaders, truckers and other key stakeholders. Transport and Infrastructure Cabinet Secretary James Macharia backs the move to expand business opportunities within the Naivasha ICD with the setting up of a special economic zone.
Anywhere you go today, it's not about putting together a standalone industrial zone. It's a question of having a very broad-based special economic zone which can take into account all businesses, all sectors.
The standard gauge railway still struggling to attract business and break even. Macharia backs Naivasha ICT to boost business for Kenya Railways.
In about 12 months, you would have the railway from here all the way to Logonal Station, then Logonal Station all the way to Malaba. This is what you create through seamless connectivity of rail from the port of Mombasa to Malaba port. This is what you make sure that in future you don't have like what we have today at Malaba. Trucks queuing at a length of about 60 kilometers. This is what you solve that problem.
Since completion of the SGR project from Mombasa to Naivasha last year, cargo movement from Mombasa to Malaba by rail has reduced to 10 hours from 48 hours. Already the government has earmarked 3.5 billion shillings to upgrade the Naivasha-Malaba old meter gauge railway. However, plans to construct a new meter gauge railway line from Maimahi station to Longonot station is underway, with design complete and is expected to commence in 12 months.
This station will be taking at least 4 trains per day. 4 trains per day, with a total annual tonnage of about 2 million. That way then we have a proper business case to make sure that indeed this investment, it was worth it.
Going forward, local truckers want the government to protect them from harassment by neighboring officials, as well as increase efficiency at the Naivasha depot to avoid delays.
Kienda nje ya Uganda, wanachukuliwa kwamba wao ndio wamefanya nini? Wamebeba hii corona kwa mfuko kutoka Kenya kuwapelekea. Wanakuja ukiwa unapiga pale chakula chako, wanakunyang'anya. Na huwezi kusema lolote.
Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Moving on, the Kenya Tea Development Agency has released 649 million shillings to smallholder farmers affiliated to its managed factories for the financial year ending 30th June 2019. The dividends issued by the KTDA holdings and its subsidiaries will be paid to the farmers this month, according to the agency. KTDA says in a statement that payslip farmers will receive from the respective factory companies will now show the actual dividend payments accrued from the subsidiaries, separate from normal monthly payments for tea deliveries. According to the agency, factory companies have now received a total of 3.7 billion shillings in dividends cumulatively over the last 5 years from KTDA and its subsidiaries' business activities. Herders in Samburu County have received 900 camels as the local government targets to make its people food secure through livestock production. Herders in lowland areas of Samburu North and Samburu East have been first beneficiaries of the initiative, which Governor Moses Lenol Kudal says will also act as a unifying factor for different pastoral communities living in the county.
Statistics from the Samburu County Special Programs Department reveal that more than 70,000 acres of vegetation cover and pasture in Samburu East have been destroyed by locust. And with vegetation getting depleted in most parts of Samburu East, pastoralists are now scrambling for pasture, which could lead to conflicts.
Kwa sababu tumeona wakati hali ya anga imebadilika sana, na hasa kiangazi ambayo huwa inatusumbua kwa muda mrefu hapa Samburu, ngamia naweza kusema ya kwamba ndio naweza kuita the last man standing.
In efforts aimed at averting a crisis, the county government has rolled out a program that will see 900 camels distributed to herders in lowland areas of Samburu North and Samburu East.
Sababu ya hii program ya ngamia ni mambo ya food security. Tumekuwa na jilali hivi karibuni, pia tumekuwa na locust, tumekuwa na changamoto pia ya corona, na kwa sababu uchumi ya watu wetu inategemea mifugo, ndio sababu tumeona pia tuendelee kudiversify mambo ya mifugo na ndio sababu tuko na ngamia.
The county's livestock officer Francis Nganga says the Somali breed type of camel has many benefits to farmers in the region compared to cows, goats and sheep.
Mfugaji ambaye ana ngamia moja inayekamuliwa, yeye anaweza kulisha jamii yake ya average ya watu 6 kwa nyumba kwa sababu ya maziwa ya ngamia. Ngamia hao ambao tumenunua zaidi ya 900 itagharimu kaunti yetu shilingi zaidi ya milioni 72 kwa sababu hawa ni ngamia wa breeding.
Beneficiaries are optimistic that the program will herald a new beginning for peace and prosperity among the pastoral communities.
Hiyo ananadawa maziwa mingi, tunauza hiyo maziwa na hata hiyo maziwa tunauza tunasemesha watoto wetu shule.
Ngamia inaanza kupumulia njaa, inaanza kupumulia hata kiu, inakaa siku 7 bila kunywa maji. Baada ya hiyo hata miti yote, hata kama unalisha mali iko jilali, yeye anakula mamiti ile ambayo mbuzi akuli au ng'ombe akuli.
The county government will further facilitate access to veterinary services and animal husbandry training for the herders. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Yeyote aliye na kinga hafifu mwilini yuko katika hatari ya kuambukizwa COVID-19. Hao ni kama watu ambao wanaishi na magonjwa kama vile virusi vya HIV, kansa, TB, kisukari, miongoni mwa magonjwa mengine. Lazima wazingatie matibabu ili kuboresha kinga mwilini. Lazima wahakikishe wamepata dawa ipasavyo. Tembelea kliniki yako au kituo cha afya kilicho karibu nawe kwa maelezo kamili kuhusu jinsi ya kupata dawa. Pia wasaidie jamaa na rafiki kupata dawa. Dumisha mawasiliano nao na ufuate mwongozo wa kiafya kutoka kwa kituo cha afya ili kujikinga na virusi vya korona. Pata habari kuhusu COVID-19 kupitia vyanzo vinavyoaminika. Piga 719 au bonyeza *719#. COVID-19 inazuilika. Jilinde, linda familia na jamii. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na serikali ya Kenya.
I'm Cyrus. My God, that's them. Wow. Ooh, a porch swing. I know what I'm doing this weekend. I can't let go. Oh, grody.
And now on to sports news. Football Kenya Federation President Nick Mwendwa has today criticized the consultative forum convened by the Sports Dispute Tribunal yesterday with regard to the upcoming FKF elections, which nullified the grassroots elections conducted in March and ruled that the elections should be conducted from bottom up. Following that ruling, Mwendwa has stated that the Federation will not consider that decision by the tribunal and will await FIFA's direction after the World Football Governing Body denounced the tribunal's meeting.
Just yesterday, the Sports Disputes Tribunal clarified that the fresh FKF elections will be conducted from bottom up, with the earlier grassroots polls conducted in March nullified because they were conducted before a case at the tribunal was heard and determined. As a follow-up to its ruling in March this year, the tribunal convened a forum yesterday to, among other things, get views on how the election should be conducted. FKF was not party to the forum, stating that a mediation process is party-driven and voluntary, and negotiations in mediation are undertaken before an impartial and neutral third party without decision-making powers.
It is absurd that we have to stand here and talk about a tribunal. We should never have to discuss a tribunal. When a tribunal makes a decision, we should walk away and implement. But John Ohaga sasa ametengeza forum ya kudiscuss mambo ya FKF elections. Mimi nataka kusema hivi, kama John Ohaga anataka kuwa candidate kwa football election, he should offer himself.
With regards to that, Mwendo now says the Federation will await FIFA's direction as was communicated by the World Governing Body in March, because the Federation had abided by the tribunal's directives.
Sisi hatuna faith na hiyo tribunal anymore, because hatuwezi kuwa kwa litigation forever na isha decide vitu tukapoteza 6 months. Kama sio hiyo tribunal, our election will be over. Na kama mtu anakuwa grievance ya mambo ya football, they know where to go. We have an electoral board.
In December, the Sports Tribunal nullified FKF's election, citing inadequate public participation on the electoral code, as well as an improperly constituted electoral board. FKF then moved to conduct public participation on the code in all the 20 branches, and the National Executive Committee reconstituted the board, one that was passed at FKF's special general meeting held on January 28th this year. The board was mandated with conducting repeat elections, which were scheduled for March 2020. The tribunal again cited punitive eligibility criteria at Section 4 of the FKF Electoral Code and moved to disband the Federation's National Executive Committee, a move that World Governing Body FIFA, however, did not agree with.
FKF has a constitution. FKF has rules and regulations. If you want to run in the upcoming election, ngojea electoral board, itapublish way forward, come and take part. We already have rulings, na zishatuambia tutafanya nini. We will not take part any further in John Ohaga's issues, kila time akitaka kumedle na mambo ya football.
Following yesterday's development by the tribunal, FKF now says it awaits FIFA's position on the elections, subject to the global COVID-19 pandemic, which has grossly affected football activities.
Moving on, athletes who represented Team Kenya are set to benefit from a food program courtesy of the National Olympic Committee Kenya, Kenya National Sports Council and Kenya National Paralympic Committee. The initiative will first target Team Kenya athletes who represented the country in the 2002 Commonwealth Games, the African Games of 2003 and the Olympic Games of 2004.
Athletes who represented Team Kenya at international tournaments are set to benefit from a food program which was launched today with a said capital of $500,000 shillings pumped in to aid them with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic.
We know the needs are very many, cutting across very many athletes, but as a phase one, we are saying that through the joint team which has been put together by the 3 umbrella bodies, will start providing support of food to our retired athletes. The retired athletes are all the people who have been part of Team Kenya, have participated in African Games, have participated in the Olympics and have participated in the Commonwealth.
The initiative will fund
our athletes. A lot of them are languishing in poverty. A lot of them are very hungry, cannot even meet their daily needs. And most of them, like retired athletes who are now coaches, they depend on training allowances and things which have now dried up because of COVID-19. But this is a joint initiative, and we are very thankful.
NOC is also in the process of creating a database of all national level athletes, which will be extended later to include retired athletes to effectively find ways of addressing their needs.
The Court of Arbitration for Sport CAS has said it will hear banned track coach Alberto Salazar's appeal to overturn his 4-year doping suspension in November. The U.S. anti-doping agency banned the American after a 6-year investigation into his Nike Oregon project training group that resulted in charges including possession and trafficking testosterone. Now, Swiss-based CAS, the world's highest sport court, said on Tuesday it would hear appeals from Salazar and Jeffrey Brown between November 8 to 16 16th. Brown, who worked and served as a physician for numerous athletes in the training program, was also banned by USADA for 4 years. Salazar's most celebrated athlete was four-time Olympic champion. The British runner doubled up to win the 5,000 and 10,000 meters at the 2012 London Olympics and in 2016 at Rio de Janeiro while part of the Oregon camp. Formula One Chief Executive Officer Chase Carey has urged teams to make use of the reserves should any of the elite drivers test positive for COVID-19 once they delay the 2020 season starts. Now, the last driver to fill in for a team during a season was Paul de Reste, who replaced the Sikh Felipe Massa at the 2016 Hungarian GP for Team Williams. This follows the publication of an initial 8-race calendar, with this year's season expected to start in July 5th in Austria. The original March 15 opener in Australia was cancelled after a McLaren team member returned a positive test for the new coronavirus before the weekend had started. The sports planned to race without spectators, at least initially, and teams will fly in on charter flights in a bid to isolate them from the local population. F1 also expects some 1,200 essential personnel, with the 10 teams limited to a maximum 80 people each, compared to more usual 130. Well, that is all we had for you tonight. Thank you for keeping us company here on Channel 1 News Hour. Remember, maintain social distance, observe hygiene, adhere to government's directive to curb the spread of coronavirus. My name is Jackie Wimbiru. Our sign language interpreter this evening was Lucy Maura. Now I leave you in the good hands of Irene Muchuma with the weather patterns. Have a good night.
Good evening. Indeed, it's time for us to have a look at how the weather will be in the next 24 hours. A very warm welcome. My name is Irene Mchuma Udim. It is one of those nights that the whole country will experience partly cloudy conditions, apart from a few areas in Mount Kenya and Aberdares where showers will prevail over few places. Thursday morning, the country will experience sunny intervals over most places, apart from Malindi, Lamu and Mombasa, where we're expecting showers over few places. The capital will be cloudy, though sunny intervals will still prevail. In the afternoon, residents in Kisii, Kericho, Kitale, Narok, Nakuru and Kakamega, we're expecting showers which will be accompanied by thunderstorms over several places, and also few areas in Lake Turkana. We're expecting wet conditions to prevail. The highest temperatures across the country will stand at 36 degrees Celsius, and that will be in Lodwar and Mandera. Nairobi will experience maximum of 25 and lows of 13 degrees Celsius. And for you in Voi, we're expecting maximum of 32 degrees Celsius and lows of 23 degrees Celsius. And on that note, let's now cross the borders and see how weather patterns will shape up in other parts of the world. Do have a good night and a blessed day ahead.